It's time for a Drummer Nation. Hello, this is Michael Vosbein, your host for Drummer Nation. This is show number 7, The Major Chord. My guest this episode is Rob Perkins. We'll let Rob tell you where he's from. He's currently making his home in Los Angeles. After a 6-year stint with Michael Buble, we'll find out what he's up to. Welcome, Rob.
Howdy. Good to see you, Michael.
Same here, brother. How's everything?
Everything's great. We finally got underneath the 100-degree temperature out here, so we're back living like humans again for a little while.
Well, we're hitting it here in Atlanta, so it comes out in the wash.
Enjoy.
Your life is a little different now, huh? Do you have an addition in your family?
Yeah, we have a gorgeous, gorgeous little girl who's just shy of 16 months right now. Absolute best, most joyous thing that could have ever happened. It's been amazing. So I'm now home, off the road. Been off the road for a handful of years now, living quite a different daily life. I'm home for dinner, as they say, and having a great time. Being a dad's been an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's the best thing in the world, and congratulations. So
Thanks.
Let's go back. You went to the Thelonius Monk Institute?
For during grad school, I concurrently did a fellowship with the Thelonius Monk Institute, which at that time was housed at USC. I think now it's back at UCLA.
Okay.
While I was there, I did my master's at USC and a fellowship with the Monk Institute. I had a long relationship and fantastic relationship with the Monk Institute.
Sounds like a great learning experience from both of those places. I think you probably had some wonderful education behind you there, right?
Education, musical growth, and friendships made. It's one of those. We don't get a lot of opportunities to be in bands these days, and spent 2 years as a member of a band with the same guys for 2 years and got to know them really well. It's still some of my closest friends to this day. It was a pretty fantastic experience, growing wise in terms of as a person, as a musician, and an opportunity to kind of sit still. And as you or your viewers may know, the Monk Institute continuously is bringing in guest artists to come and spend about a week with you. So you're sitting still in and out of the door, walking all of your favorite people, and you get to spend some time with them and get to know them and make some music with them.
So that's how you got to work with some of these wonderful musicians on your resume. Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Terrence Blanchard, Clark Terry, Jimmy Heath, they all came through the school?
Yep, Roy Haynes came through at one point. I still have, that was one of my favorite experiences. I still, on my favorite set of hi-hats, I've got a Roy Haynes signature on there that I enjoy looking at every time I sit down and set up.
He's a legend. I remember I met Elvin Jones shortly before he passed, and what are you going to say to a guy like that? You play good? Hey, man, you play good. I put my hand, I said, I love you, brother. And he put his hand on mine. I love you too. And it was all that needed to be said when you run into people like that. Roy Haynes is still amazing.
I learned early on, and I forget who it was that told me this. It was like at a gig at Catalina's where Vinny was playing. I was super nervous to go up to Vinny and say hi and blah blah blah. And some point, someone gave me a tip just to gesture over at the bar and say, "What are you drinking?" It's the best thing you can say to a guy that you're nervous about, walking up to and approaching, and what are you doing and what are you listening to? What sticks are you using? Just
right.
Let me buy you a drink. What are you drinking?
Well, when I had my company, I interacted with all kinds of world-class artists, as you know, and I think they just want to be accepted as people, just be appreciated and respected for who they are, and most of them are very easy to get along with once you come at them the right direction.
Absolutely. And chances are, if they just finished a set and you're trying to say hi, they're trying to get to the bar and get a drink. So if you're helping them get there, then you're already getting started on a good foot with
There
them.
you go. Now, how long once you got out of school before you hooked up with the Michael Buble gig?
Oh man, I would say about 3 years. I probably finished the Monk Institute around 2002, and I started traveling with that band in 2005. And
Let's jump to getting on that band because I know you must have been doing good work in LA to come to their attention in the first place. How did that gig come about?
I was actually living in New York at the time. Um, and I would say spending maybe 75% of my time in New York, occasionally popping my head into LA. But at that time, I was already on the road and traveling a lot in and out of New York with various groups. And I think that for whatever reason, I don't. There was so at the time there was a guy on the band who I think was maybe the first drummer on the band. Great friend of mine and one of the funniest people I
And
know
who's that?
named Bill
I
Wysasky,
know Bill Lesaski.
and
Yeah, he's a good
yeah,
drummer too. Damn good drummer.
great drummer, hilarious, great guy to be around. And whenever the circumstances were that Bill was ready to come off the road, they held auditions, and for whatever reason, I don't logistically it worked out that they held auditions in New York. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, maybe the guys were in town. They held auditions in New York. I had some buddies in the band. A bunch of guys in the band were people that I knew either from the Monk Institute or were going to USC at the time that I was at the Monk Institute. It was a very USC heavy band.
There's that network
Um,
for you.
exactly, which is a huge. Obviously, there's no overplaying how things like that can be of
Of
benefit,
course.
especially. And it's not to say that it's who you know, but if you already have a great musical camaraderie
Right.
with people, then you're not going to spend 6 months trying to establish a musical relationship with
It's a
people.
good reason to go to a great school. That's why businessmen go to Harvard.
There you
Same
go.
kind of thing. Now, what was the audition like? Did you have to read something, or did you know the book, or did you play with a band, or just with the music
I
director?
think just the at that time there were only four horns in the band, and they sent me a bunch of tunes to learn. I don't think I got charts. I think I just got audio recordings of tunes to learn, and maybe there was like two of the four horn players at the New York audition, and the rhythm section was there. And I remember playing through some of the charts. It was like a trombone and a saxophone only that were there. And so you're sort of playing these semi big band charts with only people playing inside voices. You know, they're not necessarily playing the melody parts, and sounded weird and goofy as all heck, but obviously they're just mostly checking out to see how you fit in with the rhythm section
Yeah,
and everything.
stick to your guns.
Yeah,
So you're setting up big ensemble figures with nobody there, really.
with nobody there, exactly, and you have to make it convincing,
That's a little
you know.
off-putting. Okay, so now
And
you're out of college, you're on the road with Michael Buble, and unlike just any other jazz gig or bebop gig, or now you're with a star, you're with a celebrity. He's huge, he's giant. Everywhere he goes, it's standing room only in giant venues. What was that like getting used to?
it was interesting. I think I joined up, and we all have. I feel like I joined up just as the gas kind of hit the fire with him. So it was a really interesting ride from that point to watch, even just from a business standpoint, to watch a label and a marketing team and a promotion team pour their strategies into an artist right at that point. I feel like I sort of joined up just as he had proven himself to a lot of people, and whatever the powers that be decided, all right, let's go, let's do everything we can to really break this artist worldwide,
And then to see it actually
and
happen, right?
yeah, and to see it actually work. And whenever people are making that type of business decision, they're usually banking on something they feel to be a high probability, but it doesn't always work. And so when I first started, our first gig was maybe 1,500 seat theater. We were just like he had gone from clubs to theaters, and it was only maybe 18 to 2 months later that he made the transition from theaters to almost exclusively arenas. Uh, and
So that's interesting. Now you're traveling the world. It's a big budget thing. You're seeing everywhere, every place. What was the biggest challenge musically on that gig?
that musically, I'll say there's a huge difference in the transition to be made from playing clubs to playing large theaters to playing arenas. They're they're very, very different skill sets. And me coming where I was coming from most of my training coming from guys, big band guys like Jeff Hamilton in college. I studied with Jeff to get big band stuff from him. I studied with Ndugu Chancellor to get pop and contemporary stuff from him. But there's no touch involved in those environments. There's no sound involved in those environments, and there's you have to think about not only am I projecting to the people 15 feet in front of me to am I projecting to the people 1,500 feet away from me, and regardless of what the PA is doing, are you projecting that energy and are you projecting your style, your sound, and your ability to push your sound through the music to those people 1,500 feet away from you, and that's an intense effort. It's a very, very different thing.
That's a great answer. I mean, you're actually driving the bus.
But now you're driving the bus through a monster PA system in a room that's not built for sound, and then you're driving the bus through, and that gig through in-ear monitors, which is a very, very different thing. We pretty early on in my tenure in the band switched over to in-ear monitors, where whatever you think your sound is, it's a very, very different world inside of those things. So trying to make a an old Frank Sinatra chart sound right when you're not even really sure what you're playing. It's a real challenge, and we definitely went through a learning curve to get it together and got pretty good at it eventually.
Well, you sure must have. I
But
mean, I heard you in the band. I know you did. But evidenced by your tenure, how long did you do?
I was there for 8 years.
Well, that's somebody.
Yeah, it's
That's
a long
somebody who got the
time.
gig right.
Yeah, it's a long
And
time.
then,
Thank you.
yeah, you sounded great on that band. Were you able to be on some recordings as well?
Yeah, there's some live DVDs. I think two live DVDs that I'm on. There's a couple tracks on his records that I'm on. Yeah, there's some tracks here and there. There's some stuff that he put out just as pure singles. So yeah, there's some recordings out there that we got to be on as touring band
Maybe I
members.
can find something on YouTube as fair use. We only use a few seconds of it to give people
Right
an
on.
idea. Now, you have a website?
For myself as a drummer artist these days, I don't have a website
That's
up
okay.
anymore.
It's less and
Um,
less important
yeah.
now with social media. You are off the road, family man now, back living in LA, I presume, right? And now you've
Yep.
started an agency?
Yeah. I have a company called On the Beat Music Agency here in Los Angeles. We do about 22 to 26 events a week, depending on the week. Some of them are, this certain gig is every other week, et cetera, et cetera. And it's something I like to say that I fell into, but it's BS. I'm a very strategic thinking guy, and you don't fall into something that's doing 26 events a week. The if the first,
Yeah, I fell
the
into a cymbal business and I worked 24
yeah,
7,
exactly, yeah,
365.
accidentally,
I
yeah,
hear you. I hear you.
yeah, yeah. I love when people humbly say, "Yeah, it just kind of happened," and no, you work hard at it and build a business, and uh, I don't know how to, I don't, not, but that being said, it is somewhat difficult to pinpoint exactly where it began. As all opportunities do, they begin with a small little toehold into an opportunity, and you go in there, you do the best job that you can.
So you're building a business that you've started. You've invested wisely. I know we've talked about that. And now let's not forget, you're still and always a drummer. You're gigging, right?
Yeah, I'm out there playing as well. It's interesting though, being on the agency side of things, I'm very, very careful. I don't play any of the gigs that I book. Um, I don't know how if you know, there's this history. There's lots of musicians who have found their way into the booking side of things, and so often there's this dynamic that hey, I'll book you on this gig, but you have to hire me to play. And I think that's one of the worst things that someone can do to the music. It's one of the worst things that someone can do to the business.
Yeah, it's basically
So
a conflict
when
of
I
interest.
yeah, it's
Good
it's
for you.
awful. So
Now, so what
yeah.
kind of gigs are you playing?
It's funny. This coming up weekend, I'm heading to somewhere in Northern California with Molly Ringwald. She's also a jazz singer, quite a good jazz singer. I go out with her once every few months or so. I'm playing a lot of jazz gigs around here in Los Angeles. I have a home recording situation set up, so I'll do some sessions by mail. My wife is a songwriter and producer, so I'll do a lot of programming for her as well.
Fingers in a lot of pies. You think that's an important element of being a successful drummer these days?
For me, it's an important element for me being able to sleep at night. It's just it's just what makes me feel more comfortable, that I feel like that I have multiple income streams coming in, that there's lots of things going on. I've never been someone who's been comfortable having all of my eggs in one
Good
basket.
advice. Now, are you teaching as
Yeah.
well?
I'm not. And just not something that's come along. It's something that I've thought about doing, but it's not something I'm doing. I've been thinking about reaching out to some of the old programs I've been involved in. I think I would really like to take all of this experience on the business side of things, as someone who's booking music, and I receive easily over 50, closer to 75 submissions from various artists around Los Angeles, or really around the country now, who are interested in getting booked on gigs in Los Angeles. It's a really fascinating, interesting position that I've been in, and I feel like I have a lot to say that can be constructive to people, even potentially coming out of schools, to how do you go out there and get a gig? How do you market yourself? How do you broadcast to someone that you might be able to be a value add to their business?
So, what do you have planned next, Rob? You're involved in drums, in production, in songwriting, in electronics, and your company, a booking agency. If you had another hour in the day, what else are you?
So
What's
the
coming
other
up for
half
you?
of what I do is, while I was on the road, I started buying some investment property while I was traveling, and sort of looking for, I don't know, something constructive to do. It's also, part of what I was saying about never having all of my eggs in one basket. So the other part of what I do is I own a handful of investment property, some here in Los Angeles, around the country. Hopefully, within about 2 weeks, I'm in contract closing on a deal on a 28-unit apartment building just north of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm working on growing that portfolio as well. I have a goal of 100 units within the next 5 years. This transaction will put me pretty close to achieving that, or put me further down the road towards achieving that. So yeah.
Well, we have a few things in common in that we're artists.
hmm
You and I are drummers, and we're
You
businessmen as well. There's a dichotomy there, though, right? I mean, it's two
and you
different
know what?
hats.
Once I fully acknowledged both of those hats, and those being valid parts of my personality, my life changed completely. And I really have to give credit for that to Michael Carvin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Michael Carvin. Yeah, I was.
Sure, Berkeley
And I
teacher
was studying with
extraordinaire.
Michael in New York just before getting the Buble gig, and Michael, very one of the things Michael says to all of his students is, students that are sort of lucky enough to be accepted by Michael. He's very selective in who he selects, and he says to them, like, I'm going to help you find your sound on the instrument, but in order to do that, I'm going to introduce you to who you are as an adult. And he'd say to me, at being a man, he'd say, I'm going to introduce yourself. I'm going to introduce you to who you are as a man. Which, saying that to, I don't remember how old I was at the time, but like, I didn't necessarily know what he meant. But early on, he said, you're not just a drummer, you're a businessman. You need to stop pretending that you're not a businessman, because I can tell from however many weeks of getting to know you, that's a big part of who you are. And he helped to develop that in me, and help me to kind of embrace that and pursue that as part of what it is that I do in the world. And everything changed from that day. And it's been amazing.
Well, you're not the first person to speak so highly of him. I'd love to have him on the show one day. Personally,
Yeah.
I've never met him, but
He's a
everybody
he's a
raves about Michael Carver.
phenomenal human being. And the way, I'll just the last thing about that is, the way that he crossed my path is, I remember being in LA, getting ready to graduate, or maybe I just graduated my undergrad, and there was an article in the New York Times about all these drummers who happened to be a group of some of my favorite drummers that were all students of Michael Carvin's. And They were all guys who had their own identity. They had their own sound. They were leaders in their own right. They were all people that I really, really looked up to, and I would have never known that they all had Michael Carvin in common.
That's the mark of a great teacher, when you see all these successful students who are truly in disparate styles. You know, I think Ed Silva's another example. There are wonderful drummers who have come through his program, and none of them sound like it. And none of them sound like each other.
I cannot stress, as someone who came through the jazz education university music school system, I can't stress that highly enough. If there's a teacher out there who all of their students sound like that teacher, run for your life. Get the heck out of there. And that's not to say that that teacher isn't a phenomenal drummer and a phenomenal musician and a phenomenal person, but if their students all sound the same and sound like that teacher, run for your life.
Well, especially if you're looking to be a professional, if you're 12 years old.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, but when you're mentoring, professionally mentoring, that job is to find you. And a great teacher can help you do that. Well, I think the word that comes to mind when looking at you and your life and your career is balance. You seem to be very well balanced.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's a key? I mean, you can't just live for the drums.
And for me, where that comes into play, and it was sort of a key part of my coming off the road as well. It's the total balance between my music world, my business world, keeping myself physically in great shape. I look at pictures of myself my last 2 years on the road, and I see someone who's 20 pounds heavier, who doesn't look happy. I look in my own eyes, and I'm thinking to myself, like, whoa, what's wrong with that guy?
Well, the last part of that equation is certainly family, right?
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I can't stress enough. And for me, is a huge component in me kind of having both my feet on the ground and having obviously tremendous support from my amazing wife, Shelley. I come from I'm a small town guy. So not only just being home and being around my family, but being home and being around community and having the opportunity to build consistent community and a group of friends around me. And that's a huge major improvement for me in terms of getting to kind of be home for dinner, as I like to say.
Did you ever see the movie, just parenthetically, New York, with Robert De Niro years ago?
I don't know if I did.
He was a tenor saxophone player in the movie. And he runs into Liza Minnelli, and her character's saying, well, what do you want in your life? He said, well, I just want my major chord. So, well, what's that? So my major chord, it's enough money to live comfortably, and not in any order, and somebody to share my life with, and the ability to play music I believe in.
There you go.
That's all any of us can aspire to, is our major chord. And it sounds like you've got one with maybe a major seventh on top.
I'll take it.
All right, brother. Well, thank you for doing my show, and let's keep in touch, and let me know what's up with you. I hope to see you next time I come to LA.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be asked. It was really good catching up with you. Take care, Michael.
You've been enjoying Drummer Nation, show number 7, The Major Chord, originally published July 31st, 2016, with my guest, Rob Perkins. This is your host, Michael Vosspine, and I want to thank our friends at Atlanta Pro Percussion, Danette Classic Drums, Sabian Cymbals, and Classic Drummer Magazine. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.